Is a Jew allowed to own a dog? Okay. Now, what I won't be talking about today are issues of kashrus of dog food. Oh, that's a separate shiur. What I won't be talking today is about handling animals on Shabbos and Yoseph. That's a separate shiur. Those are separate shiurim unto themselves, because a dog is muktzah and a cat is muktzah. So that's a separate shiur. What we will be talking today is another issue, a more fundamental issue, which is the issue of the permissibility bichlal of owning a pet. And we'll see a number of issues that may be involved in owning pets, specifically dogs, which are in some ways a man's best friend, but in other ways they may present problems for living in a Jewish community. And we know, Mr. Gruda, how many dogs were there in where you lived when you were growing up? How many dogs were there?
In Poland?
Yeah. Did people own dogs?
Not among the Jews.
Not among the Jews, right. It was well known. You know, you speak to a Europeische Yid, in a Europeische family, having a dog was anathema. What? And so again, I know there was a family that I was very friendly with in Pennsylvania, and they named their dog Muktzah, because that was how they related to their pet on Shabbos. But we're not going to talk about that now. Let's just talk about the original Makoros. By the way, I grew up with a dog. Just want to let you know. So I have an affinity for dogs. But we're just going to study the Makoros tonight, and we'll see what they say. So there's a Gemara all the Gemaras tonight, for interestingly enough, are in Bava Kama. We're going to see 4 different pieces of Gemara in Bava Kama. The first one is on Tesvav Amud Beis, where the Gemara says, "V'hashta de amart palga nizka kinasa," that there's something called chatzi nezek, where if a behema, an animal, behaves in an abnormal fashion, that it's abnormally violent and it commits damage in an abnormally violent fashion, we only make a person pay chatzi knas, a half of the normal damages, because this was totally unexpected. And it's knas. It's what is called a penalty. And penalty payments are only assessed by the Batei Din in Eretz Yisrael, not by Batei Din in Bavel. So, therefore, hai kalba de achal imri, if a dog eats a sheep, the shunra de achla tarnagola, or if a cat is eating chickens, mishunahu. That's unusual. That's an unusual phenomenon. And as a result, we would only assess a chatzi nezek. And furthermore, v'lo magbinon bebavel, and it's not a damage that can be assessed in Bavel, because in Bavel they don't assess kanas, they only assess real damage. V'hani mili beravravi, aval bezutre urchehu. But that's only true if a dog eats a big sheep, or if a cat eats a big chicken. But if you're dealing with a baby lamb, then it is normal for a dog to attack. A little chick, it is normal for a cat to attack. And therefore, if your dog or cat attacks someone else's very tiny animal, then you are going to be responsible for nezek. You're responsible because that's considered to be orche. V'itafas lo matkinan minei. And regarding when your dog eats a big sheep, or your cat eats a big chicken, even though we don't assess knas in Bavel, if a Babylonian Jew goes over whose chicken has been eaten by a cat, goes over to the owner of the cat and seizes his money, we don't take it away from him. But what he did was incorrect. He should have gone through proper legal channels. But if he does take compensation for his dead chicken, we're not going to force him to relinquish it. V'i Omar kivu lizmana de azil lara de Yisrael kavinanle. And furthermore, if he says, I want to do this properly, and I want us to go set a time, we'll travel to Eretz Yisrael and we'll have a proper adjudication over this matter, because I'm entitled to at least chatzi nezek, then we grant him the date. V'lo azil mishamtinanle. And if he doesn't agree, if the owner of the dog or the cat does not agree to go, then we put that person under a ban. And in all circumstances, if the dog is this dog or cat who was eating the neighbor's small animals, farm animals, so then we're going to sequester him from the rest of the Jewish community anyway. Why? Because he's the source of damage. And so until he moves the damage away, gets rid of the damage, either puts the dog to sleep or in some way controls his dog, we're not going to have anything to do with him. And Midda Rabbi Nassan, we learn this from Rabbi Nassan. D'Tanya, Rabbi Nassan Omer, Rabbi Nassan says, Minayin shelo yigadel adam kelev ra b'toch beito. How do you know that a person should not raise a bad dog in his house? V'al yamid sulam ra'ua b'soch beso. And how do you know that he should not have a dilapidated ladder in his house, which could cause people to get injured? Tamalomar lo sasim domim beveisecha. So the Torah says, do not place blood in your house. You should not be the source of damage and injury by just even having something. Like, in other words, if you have just having a rusty, sharp piece of metal in your garage is lo sasim damim beveisecha. You can't put impediments, even if they're not properly locked up and protected. Just like you can't keep a gun in your house unlocked, right? You're not allowed to leave things that are potentially could cause damage. Okay? So in any way, the question really of the day is, what is a kelev ra? What is a bad dog? Bad dog, right? So what do we mean by bad dog? What is a bad dog and what is a good dog? And what's a regular dog?
We don't make a distinction here by tam or mord when it comes to cats or dogs.
Well, it depends if it's shchicha or not. Something that shchicha is considered to be a hezek of shein or regel. This probably be the hezek of shein, which is something that an animal normally does because it's hungry. A dog sees a chick, or a dog sees a little baby animal. He's going to run after it and eat it. Just like dogs chase cats, cats chase mice. If I'm raising mice and I have a cat living next door to me, so then it's the cat owner's responsibility to make sure that his cat doesn't get into my mice, or the baby chicks that we're talking about over here. Okay, so now this is a Mishnah that appears later on in the seventh parak. The Mishnah just says generically, lo yigadel adam es hakelev. It's really in the context of not raising certain animals. The Mishnah says you're not allowed to raise a behemoth in Eretz Yisrael because they're going to eat up a lot of the greenery of Eretz Yisrael. That's one halacha. And then later on it says, lo yigadel adam es hakelev ela im kein haya kashur b'shalsheles. You're not allowed to raise a dog in your house unless you keep the dog tied up with a chain. And so Rashi and the Bartanura say the same thing. Mipnei shenosheich uminabeach. There are two reasons. Number one, dogs bite. And number two, dogs bark. Umapeles isha miyir aso. And just the bark in itself can cause injury. Because as we'll see, there's a story in the Gemara that a dog who was barking caused a woman to miscarry out of fright. On this Mishnah, we have a couple of Gemaras. Number one, the Gemara in Daf Peyam at Aleph in Bava Kama says, Kishem sh'amru ein megadlin behemedaka, kach amru ein megadlin chayadaka. Just like the rabbi said, you're not supposed to raise small domesticated farm animals in Eretz Yisrael because they're going to eat the greenery. So too, you're not supposed to raise a chayadaka, which is an animal that is undomesticated but is of a small variety. So Rabbi Shmuel qualifies that statement, and he says, when it comes to dogs, some dogs are okay. Megadlim klavim kofriyin. You're allowed to raise kofri dogs. We'll define kofri dogs in just a second. V'chatulim and cats, the kofin and monkeys, the chuldam, the sanoim, chuldo sanoim, a certain kind of weasel, mipnei shasuim l'nakeres habayis, because these are domesticated wild pets. They clean up the house. They get rid of the mice in the house. So Rashi tells us, what is a kelev kofri? Rashi says, and he says, ketanim v'nanosim hein. They're the small midgety dogs, like the ones that Paris Hilton keeps in her purse. Right?
Who's that?
Who's Paris Hilton?
Who's Paris Hilton?
Yeah. It's the Paris Hilton. Thank you for that, Rabbi Posner. You're a graduate of Wish Yeshiva. Okay. So the little tiny Chihuahua dogs, or the little vanity dogs, I guess is what you call them. Those are okay, because those are not ferocious. They don't create problems. And Lashon Acher, Rashi says another explanation is Kalavim Gidolim Shel Tzayodim Ve'in Mazikim. These are big dogs, like Labrador retrievers. What does he call them? They're dogs that accompany hunters when they go out on a hunt. And these are dogs that are completely tame. They don't bite at all. They're a species of dog, I would say like a Labrador retriever. That's why it's called a retriever. Why? Because it goes out and fetches the prey that you just shot with the arrow or the gun. Right? What other kinds of dogs are like that?
Newfoundland.
A Newfoundland species of dog, something like that. A very, very tame dog that's been trained and domesticated. A sheepdog. A Saint Bernard.
Golden retriever.
Well, which one gets the ducks?
The ducks? The one that gets the ducks.
All that are called retrievers.
Right.
That's why they're called retrievers.
A Labrador, a Golden Retriever, right.
A collie is not a retriever, but it's
Okay, perhaps a collie as well. Okay. All right, so now let's take a look at the Gemara. So first, so that's the first thing. Rabbi Yishmael tells us an interesting halacha. We have to see whether we paskin like this Rabbi Yishmael, because up until now the Mishnah has said you can't have a dog unless you keep it chained. And the Mishnah made no distinction upon the species of dog. Doesn't matter what kind of dog it is, whatever, any dog you have to keep up chained. So the Gemara now says on Daf Pei Gimel now, a few blot later, Lo yigadol adam es hakelev elim kein kasher b'shal shalo. So Tana Rabbanan, here's a brisa. Lo yigadol adam es hakelev elim kein kasher b'shal sheles. You can't raise a dog unless you keep it tied up. Avol megadol hu bi'ir hasmucha l'sfar v'kosher b'yom u'matiro b'layla. But here's what you are allowed to do. Here's an exception. If you live in a border city where there are marauders that regularly come into your city, to your town, from a neighboring nation or city-state, and you've been broken in a number of times, and you need to protect yourself, so then you're allowed to have a dog that you keep tied up during the day when it's pretty safe outside, but at night you're allowed to untie it after people have gone to sleep. You're allowed to untie it to let it roam and catch anyone who wants to try and break in. Tanya Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol Omer Hamagadol Klavim Kimagadol Chazirim. Rabbi Eliezer the Great says that raising a dog in your house is like raising pigs. So Lamai Nafkamina, why? What's the point of you telling me that? Lamekam Alei Ba'arur. Because there's a curse that Scripture places upon he who raises pigs, and that same curse goes on a person who raises dogs. Amar of Yosef Bar Minyumi, Amar of Nachman, Bavel Ki'ir Asmucha L'Sfar Dami. That Bavel, or at least one of the cities in Bavel, is like a border city as far as being a dangerous place. And Tirgama Naharda. And they explain that it's referring to the city of Naharda, because Naharda is a place, which is in a precarious neighborhood. It's like the Harlem of Bavel, whatever. The Washington Heights of Bavel, I should say. And so the Jews there are very careful to make sure that they've got good security systems, and that's why they're allowed to keep their dogs unchained at night. So, Darish Rabbi Dustoi Dimin Biri, Uvenucho Yomar Shuva Hashem Rivavos Alfei Yisrael. So here's a little bit of Agadata, which is very interesting. It needs to be analyzed a little bit further. But he says as follows. We have the pasuk that says that when the ark would come to a rest, Moshe Rabbeinu would say, "Return, O God, to the myriads and the thousands of Israel." Myriads is 20,000, thousands is 2,000. So we're talking about the Shekhinah resting on 22,000 Jews. The Gemara uses this pasuk in a number of places to tell me that the Shekhinah cannot rest on less than 22,000 Jews present. Okay? L'lamedcha, this teaches me, she'ein Shekhinah shar al Yisrael pachas mishnei alafim mishnei revavos, but chaser echas. But let's say you have 21,999 Jews. The haisa isha muberes b'nei muru'i lahashlim. And one of the women there is pregnant, and she's ready to give birth, and with her newborn child there'll be 22,000 people when the Shekhinah will come. V'navach ba'kela v'hipila, and a dog, your dog, goes ahead and barks at her and causes her to miscarry, Nebach, your dog takes the one pregnant woman out of the 21,999 people and makes us short one person that we could have had to bring the Shechina. Nimsa ze gorim l'Shechina she tistalek mi Yisrael. So this bark caused the Shechina to leave the Jewish people. Now, I could have come up with a number of different reasons or exhortations to tell me how bad it is to have a dog cause a woman to miscarry. What about the fact that this was a potential life? That this was a neshama that could have done great things in the world? Why Chazal choose this particular example, that by causing a woman to miscarry, you could potentially cause the Shechina not to rest within the Jewish people? I don't have an answer, but it's something that you may want to think about. So then the Gemara, and it's such an extreme, unusual kind of illustration. Hahi itza de olas lameifa be'ahu beisa. So now the Gemara tells us a story. There was once a woman who had received permission to go into a certain home where there was a big oven that people used to go from the neighborhood and would bake their bread. So here she is, she's carrying a pekala and she's a pregnant woman, she's carrying a pekala of dough and she's about to put it in the oven. Navach ba kalba, the dog that was right nearby, starts barking at her. Amar la more lo tistafi minei shkule nive. So the owner of the dog, perhaps he was the guy who ran the oven, he says, don't be scared, I've defanged the dog. I've defanged him, he doesn't have teeth. So Amra le shkili toivoseich b'shadya achizri kvar nod vlad. She said to him, your kindness is thrown upon the thorns, meaning you haven't done me any favors. The fright of hearing your dog has already caused my fetus to dislodge and I've just miscarried. And that's how the story ends. And that's the cautionary tale of the Gemara, which would seem to imply that even defanging a dog so that it's not in danger of biting anyone, but just the fact that it barks a lot is also going to be problematic. There are types of dogs that no matter how much you reassure the person who comes to visit, that dog, I don't want to get near that dog. He's got big, big teeth. He's got foam, it's foaming at the mouth, and the woman says to me, oh, don't worry, he loves kids. Right.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Right. So this is exactly what the Chazal were cognizant of this, that the emotional terrorism that a dog can present on a child and even on an adult is quite significant. So you can't always just reassure a person, don't worry, he doesn't bite. He's a gentle dog while he's sniffing you in your private parts. You don't know what's going to happen next, right? So anyway, take a look at the tour. Take a look at the tour, and let's see how the tour analyzes this. V'asur lagadol kelav ra elim kein hu asur b'shal shalosh shel barzel. The Torah says you're not allowed to raise a bad dog unless he is tied up in a chain. Now you notice that the Torah says kelev ra. We still haven't defined kelev ra yet. So it could be there's a difference. Now one definition could be that every kelev is ra, and that the only type of dog that's not a kelev ra is the kofri dog that we discussed in the beginning. On Daf Pei, that Rabbi Shmuel's dog, who was either a midget, like the Chihuahua, or is a retriever. A hunting dog that's extremely domesticated and tame. So the Torah just says, unless it's tied up in chains of iron, the kosher bahen, and it's tied up. But if it's a city that's a border town, so then you only can tied up at night, you can unleash it during the day. The Darkei Moshe quotes from a Shiltei Giborim. So instead of just reading the Darkei Moshe... What? Sorry, the other way around. You're right. You can unleash it at night. Sorry. The Darkei Moshe quotes a Shiltei Giborim, which we'll see. Just turn the page and look at the Shiltei Giborim. Ha'amim rabos tamati mehicha nogu legadol klavim. He's one of the Rishonim, the Shiltei Giborim, and he asks the question, I've wondered to myself quite a lot, he says, On what basis do my fellow Jewish brethren have dogs in their houses? V'nira d'shema dafka b'ir hasmucha l'sfar b'yom she'enon yurein koshra. He says maybe when we say that there's a special heter for an ir hasmucha l'sfar, that in a border city we allow you that during the day when people are not scared you have to tie it up. But at night you need extra security, so the Gemara said you can untie it. Va'anon, but we are different. Va'anon shedarin beinehem, we live amongst very menacing non-Jews. And therefore we're even worse than a border city. A border city is when you have a shtetl that's all Jewish, and you're scared of marauders visiting from an adjacent city-state. But over here we're talking about we mamish live in the shtat together with very violent, menacing people who are, they're not nice. And so therefore it could be afilu biyom matir and be'ir hasmucha l'sfar kilayla dami ki heichi de'ir hasmucha l'sfar matir and balayla chanami lididon afilu biyom. He wants to argue, the Shiltei Giborim, that you could leave your dog untied as a security measure even during the day. If you live in a neighborhood which is so menacing that you could be the victim of violent crime even during the day, it's okay to let your dog roam freely around your house to protect you. Why?
Because it could be attacked an innocent person.
I guess the justification the Shiltei Giborim offers is your personal safety is more important than worrying about visitors. Put up a big sign that says, beware of dog. I don't know if they had mail delivery in the times of the Shiltei Giborim. Okay, take a look at how the Shulchan Aruch paskins, and we'll see that the Ramah sort of takes this Shiltei Giborim into account. Asur legadol kelev ra, ela im kein hu asur b'shal shalosh shel barzel v'kosher bohem, v'ir asmuch l'sfar mutar legadol kosher b'yom u'matir b'layla. Classic quote from the Gemara, standard. Okay, comes along the Ramah and says, V'yesh omrim, this is source number 7, V'yesh omrim dehashta shanashruyin bein ha'akum v'umos. Now that we are living among non-Jews who are quite menacing, b'chol inyan shari, it's always permitted to leave your dog unleashed. Upuk chazi mai amadavar, and go out and see what people are doing. In other words, people aren't doing this because they're ignoramuses. People are doing this because they legitimately fear for their lives both during the day and the night, and that's the purpose of allowing us to have big, strong, menacing dogs to be able to keep the bad people away. Mihu nira imhu kelev ra, sheyesh lachus sheyazik b'nei adam da'asr lagadlo ela im ken kosher b'shal shalosh shel barzel. However, even in that scenario, where you're in a nasty neighborhood, if your dog already has a record of attacking innocent people, so there the Ramah says, it would seem to me that you still have to keep him tied up in that case. In other words, he's sort of equivocating. He's saying, you're allowed to leave your dog unleashed to sort of act as a deterrent for crime, but if your dog already has a record that he's already bitten innocent people, then you can't just let him have free rein. That's already not permitted anymore, and you have to keep him tied up. Now, but at least you can keep him. So so you see now 3 different madregas that we're seeing in the Shulchan Aruch, or actually 4 different madregas. Madrega number 1 is that you have to keep your dog tied up all the time. If you live in a very crime-free, safe neighborhood, dog always has to be tied up. Level number 2, if you live in a border city, then you can leave your dog unleashed at night as a security system after people have gone to sleep. Level number 3 is if you live in a really bad neighborhood where you live among non-Jews who are criminals and who are prone to violence. So then you can keep the dog unleashed even during the day. And the 4th level, or the caveat to level number 3, is that if this dog is a really violent dog and has already proven himself to bite, so then even in a dangerous neighborhood, you have to keep your dog on a leash. You have to keep him tied up. Okay, let's take a look at the Shulchan Aruch Harav from the Balatanya and see how he codifies this. We're going to see he's a little bit more machmir as well. V'chein hamagadol kelev ra, va'afilu eino noshech ela shemen habeach. He says, this is true that you have a problem of raising a bad dog in your house, even, this is in source number 9, even if he doesn't bite, but all he does is bark. That's called a bad dog. Kishema tapil isha miyirasa. Because maybe a woman will miscarry when she just gets this violent barking in her face. V'chol ha-megadol kelav ra harehu omed ba'arur kemo ha-megadel chazirim. Anyone, like the Gemara had said, who raises a bad dog is like he's raising pigs, and he gets a curse. V'im hu kasher b'shalshela shel barzel mutter sha'az ein mora upachad la'adam imenu. If the dog is tied up, then we're not worried about the bite, we're not worried about the bark either. Because when a woman sees a dog chained up, the bark is not going to scare her, because she'll know that no matter what, the dog can't harm her. Okay? Uvi'ir hasmucha lisfar utzricha shimur me'oivim mutter legadlo. If you live in a border city, you need to be protected from marauders. So then you're allowed to raise the dog, and v'kosher b'mo matiru b'layla. Again, the same halacha. Tie it up during the day, unleash it at night. The kelev she'eno ra, she'eno minabeach al adam. And now here's the definition. Here's a dog who's not bad, which means that not only does he not bite, but he doesn't bark at people. That's the definition of a good dog. Good dog is a dog that when someone comes to the door, the dog may go whip whip. That's about it. But it's not going to give a huge bark, a tiny little whimper, or just will run to the door, but it's not going to bark. So mutter legadlo b'chol makom ve'ein sarach lekashro klal. That type of dog you're allowed to raise anywhere you like. You don't have to keep it tied up. Ve'achshav nagu lahakil begidul kelav she'eno kosher biyom. Now a lot of people have a minhag to have more ferocious dogs. They keep them unleashed even during the day. V'yesh shalimdu aleim zuchus im eno noshech. Some try to be malamid zuchus because if the dog doesn't bite people, but it just is ferocious looking, because they keep it as a security system, like the Rama had suggested. V'nidchu devarav. And notice what he says. He says, but that Rama we don't accept. L'chein kol yirei shamayim yizahir sheyeh kosher b'shalshela shel barzel ad shah shebnei adam holchem lishon afilu eno noshech el min habeach. And therefore the Baal HaTanya is machmir. He's machmir not like the Rama. He doesn't say puk chazi mayam adavar. He doesn't say go and see what people are doing. He says no, what people are doing is incorrect. It's wrong. And therefore, if you have a dog that's ferocious and it barks a lot, even if it doesn't bite, but it's just a big barker, you have to keep it tied up in case people come over, and because a woman could miscarry. People could get frightened emotionally and be scarred by that. Right? And then at night, when people have gone to bed already, then you can unleash your dog and give it full free reign of your house, your backyard, whatever it is. The Yam Shel Shlomo, the Maharshal of the 16th century, has a longer tshuva. Just see a small extract of it. He says in source number 10, Din kelav ralo yigadol adam b'soch besu ela b'keshira mu'ula u'matiro b'layla. He says, Imhu mitnei chashat ganovim. If you're scared of ganovim coming, so then you can keep your dog unleashed at night. V'lav davka kelav ra. And here he really defines it very clearly. He says, we're not just talking about a bad dog. Your dog doesn't have to get the stigma of bad dog in order to be labeled as a bad dog. He says the definition of a bad dog, elastam kelev shehu menabeach b'chol adam karei ra. Any dog that barks at people is called a bad dog. That's the definition. The davka klavim kitanim lenoi habayis. Only small little dogs, like vanity dogs. Oh, kehagavna sheyadua lakol she'eno mazik mutar. Where it's known that these dogs do not, no one's going to be intimidated by a little chihuahua or a little schnauzer or whatever the other tiny dogs are. No one's going to worry about those dogs. And so therefore, those you can have. Afilu below kishira, and those are okay even without tying them up. Now we're going to skip the rest of the tshuva, but just at the last line, the Yam Shel Shlomo is not prepared to condemn all of Klal Yisrael who have dogs. So he says, Al Kain Hanach Yili Yisrael. He says we have to be malamed zchus on the Jewish people. There may be ways to mitigate the prohibition, but really I paskin ba'ashrei mishanis are v'tovol of bracha. But fortunate is a person who actually is makbid in the halacha and really should not have a dog that's a real barker. A real barking dog you shouldn't have. So very clearly, both the Balatanya and the Maharshal have made a very clear distinction. It depends what kind of dog it is. If it's a gentle, domesticated dog that doesn't bark at people, no problem. If it's a dog that barks, even though you've defanged it, declawed it, and everything, if it's going to scare people, before it even opens its mouth, if it's going to scare people by its bark, so then you have an obligation to keep it chained, and preferably chained both day and night, because it's very hard to rely, says the Maharshal, it's very hard to rely on the Balatanya, to rely on the heter of you live in a dangerous neighborhood.
So are the Rabbanim going to categorize which dogs are those gentle ones, or is it left up to the individual dog? Because the pit bull owner will swear up and down, he's in denial. My dog is a gentle dog.
Well, that's the definition. The definition is barking. It's not biting, it's barking. So if when I come to my neighbor's house, his dog is barking at me,
He can say whatever he wants.
he can say whatever he wants. We know the halacha already. Right. Very interesting tshuva from Rabbi Yaakov Emden. And you can always count on Rabbi Yaakov Emden to take a slightly different approach to the situation. Rabbi Yaakov Emden is more machmir. And he says, now this is, by the way, this is in parentheses because it's part of a larger tshuva where the main part of the tshuva is about when you own a dog or a cat, do you have to feed that dog or cat first, like the halacha states, by other animals that are doing work for you? Or since these dogs are not really doing work for you, you don't have to feed them first. That's the subject of his tshuva, and that could be for an interesting topic for another day. When it comes to feeding dogs, there's different halachas about how to feed dogs. Another issue that's very relevant about feeding your dogs is what kind of dog food and what kind of cat food, because there are many kinds of dog food which involve tarovis, basar, b'chalav, and milk and meat, and you're not allowed to get any hana from tarovis, basar, b'chalav. And Pesach is a big issue, right? Because of getting hana from chametz. Exactly. Okay. So he's responding to a person who's asked him a question, and he says as follows. He says, "V'shari le'mari le'planya shegidol mehem adorim b'soch beso." He says, I have to protest. Bless you. I have to lodge a protest. He says to you, my dear sir, who is not just raising one dog in his house, you have multiple dogs in your house. He says, that's a real problem. He says, Sha'afilu echad lo hitiru b'mishnah, ela im kein kosher b'shalsheles, v'ispe letusa de rabbanan rachmana litzlan. He says, the rabbis only permitted it if you have a chain on the dog. And even then, you see, the Rabbi Yaakov Emden learns that the curse that you get is even when you have a chain on it. You still get the curse. It's just that halachically it's permitted if you're prepared to accept the curse, which is pretty wild when you think about it. Like we said before, it's like raising pigs. He says something astounding. He says, I hold there is no difference between one species of dog and another. We don't paskin like Rabbi Yishmael, who says that you're allowed to have a tame, domesticated Chihuahua or golden retriever, which is pretty surprising. I think that Rabbi Yaakov Emden is the most machmir that I've seen among all of the Achronim who discuss this issue. He holds that a dog is a dog, a hunt is a hunt. And and the rabbis say you can't have one, so you can't have one, period, end of story. We know many cases where the people have been bitten by dogs and have come to become in endangered situations. And anytime there's even a potential for sakana, you have to be machmir. Now, of course, how do you apply this? Does that mean you can't have a swimming pool because people drown in swimming pools? Right? So it's a very subjective kind of thing. How do we apply this? I don't know. I don't have an answer. I'm just letting you know this is what he says.
The swimming pool is different. You can avoid the swimming pool. The swimming pool doesn't have a will of its own, whereas a dog can do things against you.
Okay, true. But you can also keep a dog chained up, just like you can keep a swimming pool gated, and yet accidents still happen. Rahmana litzlan. And even if you want to go like the man da'amar, like Rabbi Yishmael, who says you can have a domesticated, tame dog, He says, but he who is matir is only matir to have one dog. L'neture besa bilachud, just to be a watchdog to protect your house. V'hachi muchach meha deger shenaflu lo b'Yerusha she'ein mechayven oso limkar kiyim al yad. He says the later Gemara that I didn't have quoted for you talks about the following case. A ger tzedek, whose father dies, his father's a Gentile, leaves him over a whole litter of pigs. Do you call a pig's litter? I don't know, what do you call a pigs? A whole bunch of pigs, or a whole bunch of dogs. So the Gemara says you can sell them off. You're not mechuyev to get rid of them immediately, because getting rid of them immediately might cause a financial loss. You can sell them off slowly, one by one. We must be talking in that case in the Gemara about domesticated tame dogs, because the imlo hachi because if we were talking about ferocious dogs, there's no question that even for a short period of time, Chazal would never allow you to keep a wild animal, a ferocious dog in your house. Not even one if it's not tied up. So Rabbi Yaakov Emden learns that Gemara is talking about where you inherit a bunch of Labrador retrievers or golden retrievers, and there the Gemara only permits you to have multiple dogs because you inherited it from a non-Jewish father. But in order that you can get rid of them and sell them one by one so that you don't incur a huge financial loss. But not to have them in your house on a regular basis. So you see from here that it's not proper to have multiple dogs in your house even when they're tied up. Now you, dear sir, you want to try and excuse yourself by saying that the reason why I need a group of dogs in my house is because my wife is a woman of leisure. She gets bored during the day. She needs something to do, so I let her walk the dogs. She goes to the park with the dogs. It keeps her company while I'm out at work. That was the guy's excuse, right? So Rabbi Yaakov Emden objects to that. He says, "V'gam eila dvarim b'teilum, dehalo sharina lo l'tayil b'guryasa." He says, but that's nonsense, because it's not permitted for a woman to frolic with a dog. Now, why is it not permitted for a woman to frolic with a dog? Because there's a suspicion that a woman may use a dog for licentious purposes. The Gemara says explicitly that a widow should not raise a dog in her home. She should not have a dog in her house. Why? Because we're worried that, she'll become lonely at night and she'll invite the dog into her bed. And, that's not proper. Mashma afilu chad lo mehachtaim. So it's mashma that she can't even have one dog, an almana. He says, so maybe you'll tell me, well, why does the Gemara Dafka say an almana? It should say all women should not frolic with dogs, should not play with dogs. So the Gemara says, Lishar inshi vadai shari l'ribu yechad, ela d'le'itza asa l'tiyulei bei. So he says, because it's time to tell you like this. If you're a man, he says, you can have one dog for security. If you're a woman, then you shouldn't even play with one dog. Ula armalta, and if you're a widow, l'ribuye great anami ikisur, just forget about just playing with the dog, but even just to have it in your house, you can't. And I would think that an almana you could make an additional allowance for her, more so than married women. You might think, let's have Rachmanas on the almana. She has no one to protect her, no one to watch over her in the house. So let's have Rachmanas and let her have a dog because she needs it for security, for protection. So that's why the Gemara has to say, and that's why it specifies almana. So the bottom line, Rav Yaakov Emden is trying to argue that all women should not be out playing with dogs because you can get too familiar with the dog. He says, and so therefore it goes without saying that it is forbidden for women in general to just play with dogs. It's one thing that you can't have a dog for security, but it's for sure that you can't have a dog for just as a plaything, the ikala mechash tfei mechshada gereda the masuli de zimanami. And therefore, because there's always that suspicion of frolicking it for inappropriate purposes, ulaolam afilu bechad isala hacheshasha. Biyichud bosen hamyuchadim l'shiashua v'tiyul, especially for those species of dogs whose whole purpose is to keep people company and to go play and run in the park and things like that. So forget about the one dog. The one dog for a woman is not okay. But for sure, multiple dogs for your wife that you wanted to argue that my wife needs something to do, she's bored all day, that for sure is going to be asur. He says, the only exception that you could have more than one dog is if you have multiple properties, and each property needs its own watchdog, or if you have a very large herd of sheep, a flock of sheep, and you need multiple sheepdogs in order to carefully guide the sheep. But more than what is necessary, we don't permit. He says, and that's why the poskim don't make such an allowance of multiple dogs. And the ispe, furthermore, he says, there's an isser mosif, there's an additional problem with having dogs. Biyuchad ba'osam klavim chalakim varuim shein lahem saros v'konim osam b'domim yikarim l'sachek u'l'hishtashea bahen u'l'gageya imahen. He says the species of dogs that are hairless, people buy these little tiny hairless, rats that are dogs, and they pay big money for these dogs. They're thoroughbreds and pedigree, and they buy these dogs to play with them and for pleasure. The Gamisham Moshav Leitzim Asalasachim. He said, what's the additional isser? This is Moshav Leitzim. He says, what are you doing wasting your time playing with your dog, going out to the park and playing frisbee? You should be in the base medrash learning. Right, so that's another problem. It's Moshav Leitzim. Okay? Shehumamish Maisa Arelim Bar Minon. He says, because in that way, you're mamish acting like a Gentile. You're acting like a non-Jew. If that's what you do, the way you spend your Sunday afternoon going to the park with your dog, he says that's the way that the Gentiles would behave. And that's also a reason why we should prohibit it if the whole purpose of the dog is not for security, not for some utilitarian purpose. The dai bezu ha'ara la'ozen shomas, and that's sufficient for the hearing or discerning ear. So Rabbi Yaakov Emden is really, really sharp. Probably this is very formative. This is a very informational tshuva for many Jewish communities. There's always been a stigma in Europe not to have a dog. Also because many of our persecutors use dogs against us. So the dog has always been the figure, the German shepherd that the Nazis used to use, the SS used to use to sniff out Jews. That also is a big reminder and a reason why perhaps, there's part of the collective consciousness that dogs are not healthy. You grow up in North America, if you're a North American boy, Canadian boy, you grow up, you don't have any of that stuff. You have Lassie, you have Rin Tin Tin, so your whole mindset is different, right? And so perhaps that's why we've become more accepting. But you see, there's such a negative attitude that Rabbi Yaakov Emden raises. Sefer Hasidim in the 12th, 13th century also has something negative to say about dogs. But he says about all pets. The Sefer Hasidim writes in source number 12. He says, Yesh dvarim harbe marbim hevel. It says in Koheles that there are many things in life that cause vanity. Zeh hamegadlim oifois lenoyu lekilus. He says if a person raises birds for beauty, just as a vanity item, a bird as a pet. He says, Umasha motzi aleim hayilo laseis la'aniyim. The money that you spend on your pet, you should have spent it on poor people instead. So the Sefer Hasidim has another issue, right? How much money does it cost to have a pet, to get all of its shots, to take it to the vet, to buy the pet food and all of these other things? He says, if you're going to have a pet, you shouldn't be asking for a tuition reduction, right? Because, take all that money that you were going to use for your pet and give it to the school instead. That's another issue, another aspect of, a goldfish is affordable, right? If you're on tuition support, right? Okay. Now, of course, what about a Sinai dog? What about a child who needs a dog for a child who's disabled in some way needs a dog? Those, of course, we're not talking about. We're not talking about those situations where, for therapeutic reasons, sometimes people need a dog. A senior citizen who's all alone and falls into a depression, having a dog is therapeutic. There are many, many scenarios which you can create which would justify the ownership of a dog, certainly for security, certainly to be able. And of course, as you know, if it's a tame dog, you have many poskim, including the Rama himself, who are permissive of this. But I just wanted to point out that you have two sides of this coin. And finally, we'll just finish off, and then we'll open up the floor, take some questions. The Gemara now says, the Gemara in Masechah Shabbos, Darish Rabbi Yona apischa de beinasiya. Rabbi Yona expounds as follows from Gemara in Shabbos and Daf Kuf Nun Hey. Ma disiv yada tzadik din dalim. Here's something compassionate about dogs which we have to see. The righteous knows the law of the lowly. What does that pasuk mean? Yodeya HaKadosh Baruch Hu bekelev shemazonosav mu'atim. God, the righteous one, that's the tzaddik that's referred to in this pasuk, knows that dogs are the hungriest of animals, meaning that they get the short shrift in all situations. Dogs wander from place to place. They're nosing through the garbage, and they're always hungry. They don't have food. Lefichach shoha achilasu b'me'av shloshi yamin. And therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu has rachmanas on dogs. And he created the digestive system of a dog such that it would take 3 days for its food to be digested, so that it can go longer periods without food. Hashem has rachmanas on dogs. And furthermore, it says, Amar Rav Papa, leis da'anya mikalba v'les da'atir mechazira. There's no animal that's poorer than a dog, and no animal that's richer than a pig. Pigs are rich because wherever they go, they find food, right? They can eat anything. But dogs never, is the scruffy dog, the mutt that's wandering the streets, doesn't have anything. So it's the Gemara portrays the dog as an object of Rahmanis. There's nothing lower than a dog, right? So in the Sefer Pelayoetz from the early 19th century, this was I think a Bulgarian Yid who wrote Sefer Pelayoetz. It's an encyclopedia which provides different topics in alphabetical order. And he'll take a word and he'll throw everything under the sun that Chazal say about this word under that heading. So for Kelev, he has a heading, the Pelayoetz. And he says as follows about a Kelev. He says, in source number 14, he says, Hashomea klavim bochim v'tzoakim. He says, if you hear dogs crying or yelling, or yelping, howling maybe, yeah, ubifrat im tzoakim al ha'adam b'layla b'choshech. And surely if you hear them screaming at a person, like barking wildly at a person at night in the dark, umedalgen alav v'noshchen oso, and they're running after him, and you hear them biting a guy, so mama od yivchad levavo, ubechi zachor yizkor es asher tavir nefesh achotas kishenimsra biyad mazikim umalachei hachavola hadoimim leklavim ushar chayos rose. Then you should think to yourself, you should be filled with fright, and say to yourself, oy vey, imagine what I'm going to be like when I get to the olam ha'emes. My neshama is going to be running hither and yon, running away from the malachei chabola, the destructive angels who are going to be like dogs. They're compared to dogs in mystical literature, who are going to be constantly running after a person. And just imagine being chased by a wild dog. That's what the afterlife is going to be like if you've committed sins. Okay? You're going to be chased by these destructive angels who are going to be just waiting to take a bite out of the seat of your pants. Right? So, Va'afilu David HaMelech Olav HaShalom Yispalal Al Zeh. David HaMelech also says, V'omar Hatzila Mecherev Nafshi Miyad Kelev Yechidasi. He said, save me from the sword and save me from the dog that has been assigned to me, meaning this destructive angel. Va'od she'enav pesuchos yachus al va'ad she'enav pesuchos, and while your eyes are open, you're lying in bed and you're listening to this dog barking and biting a person outside, you should yachus al nefesh ruach neshama shelo timaser biat klavim azei nefesh. You should pray to God, please don't let me be placed in the hands of these wild dogs in Shemayim. And furthermore, he says, quotes the curse that will befall a person who has a dog. It's like raising pigs. Umonia chesed mi besa. But listen, he says like this, he says, not only that, but you cause kindness to not be provided in your house. And this is a very important point. People who have dogs who are very active, very lively dogs, will sometimes cause people not to want to come to your house and to be the beneficiary of kindness. You want to make your house an open, welcoming place, so then don't have a Doberman welcoming people when they come to your door. That's a very important point. Okay, and he says, the Rabbi me'amei haaretz ein nizharim u'megadlim klavim. He says there are plenty of people who are really not so well versed in the halacha, and they're not careful, and they raise dogs in their home. V'roi lahodi'am chomer shavo, and it's worthwhile to tell them that this is, it's not such a proper thing. V'im rotze legadol kelev kedei leisham min haganovim yei kosher b'shalshelis. If you want to raise a dog as a security measure to protect you from theft, then tie your dog up, keep it leashed, kedei shelo yinol deles b'fnei kol hanichnasim, so that you don't prevent people from coming to see you. V'yinotzel me'onshim, and you'll be saved from punishment. V'amru chazal, so then he switches gears at the end of this entry. In his last line, he quotes this Gemara that I just quoted for you. He says, "Les da'ani mekalba." There is no dog, there's no animal no creature that is poorer than a dog, and therefore he says, "Va'orach ara lemishtei le'umtza umizeh yikna ha'adam l'rachem al kol nimtza." Is as if you see a dog on the street, throw it a bone. You know why? Because you'll learn how to be a compassionate human being. When you throw a dog a bone, you're actually helping the lowest creature. The poorest creature on the street is the mutt, is the scruffy mutt that doesn't have a home. Throw it a bone, and when you throw an animal like that a bone, you'll learn the midah of rachmanis, you'll learn the midah of compassion, and that'll make you a better person. So you see here just a glimmer of one of the benefits of owning a pet, of training a lot of times we say that it's beneficial for children to have a pet, so that you teach them responsibility, you teach them compassion. Obviously, there could be very positive things that can come out of owning a dog. Oh, another thing that we're not going to talk about tonight, spaying and neutering dogs. We're not going to talk about that, because it's a whole separate problem these are all shiurim about owning pets. So Shabbos is an issue, food is an issue, removing their reconstructive organs is an issue.
Trapping.
What?
Trapping on Shabbos.
Trapping on Shabbos, walking them on Shabbos. All of these things are interesting topics, but the general issue of just was it permissible to have a dog in the first place because of the issue of the arur, the issue of the ferocity of the dog. At least now this is our starting point. Okay, any questions, comments?
Another positive thing about dogs, because it talks about the fact that dogs didn't bark when they... Yeah. The dogs are zochet to that reward. So the Peleoites may be alluding to that when he says throw the dog a bone.